Welcome to the public. Welcome to our auditors. Dr. Doan, I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can let it roll.
That's easy because I get to turn it over to my financial colleague who works most closely with these auditors, Olivia, who's arranged for their presence here tonight. We have two sets of auditors. Denise is here remotely only because Denise suffered, I believe, a foot injury and is not able to get around, but we have found a way to get her to appear remotely. So you'll be, if not seeing her, at least hearing her. And let me allow Olivia to introduce our auditors and kick off the event.
Yeah, Denise Longobardi is our claims auditor. She reviews the vouchers to make sure they are adequate, and I'll turn it over to her. I think Denise is going to start this, and then later on, our internal auditors from Naraki Smith are going to take over. They are responsible for the risk assessment of all our internal processes in the district. Denise, are you there?
Yes, yes, I am, Olivia. Good evening, everyone. I'm just, I
Muted?
want to say, yes, I want to
Denise,
say
you're
thank you.
muted.
Denise,
I-
we're very sorry about your foot and thank you for doing this.
Are you there?
Yes, I am here. I have it unmuted. Hold on.
Denise, we are ready for you. You are muted.
Okay, oh, I'm here. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, why don't we flip?
Why don't we, Philip?
Yeah.
You go first. Then we can
Maybe
get
she
her.
cannot unmute herself with our format. But yes, that's
You
what.
go.
I can hear
Rocky
you.
Smith, go. These are our internal auditors. And just make sure you're speaking directionally into the mic.
I will. How's that? Okay? You
That's
can hear
good.
me? Good.
You have a report?
Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you.
With all this technology, you would think, Denise, we can get a hologram, drop her in, export her out when she's done. Soon enough. So we are your internal auditors, and thanks for having us. We have status report on two items we want to go over with you tonight. One in general is our function for this current school year with the internal audit mandate in place is that you have to have the function, and the requirements of the function is that we perform an annual risk assessment, and we also do a deep cycle review in one specific area. So at the end of last year, when we presented the risk assessment, the decision was that we would do a cycle review in the fund balance area, which we're currently working on. I'm going to give you a more detailed status report of that momentarily. We began that in September and mid to late September, and we're currently at the end stages of our analysis, and we'll be writing a report, which we plan to have a draft complete in January. So we're on target with that. Subsequent, right after that, we're going to kick off the annually required risk assessment update. So we plan on conducting those interviews for that with all the key people in the district that oversee and are involved day to day with all different business functions within the district. So we're going to plan on doing that in February, along with our testing in the areas that we select for the risk assessment, with the goal of having our draft report in the March time period. And I believe our next meeting with you is in May. So we'll have that report to review with you in May, and that sets the tone for the following year deep dive selection. So we'll have recommendations at that point in time within the report to look at current internal controls, but also recommendations of what area is of interest on our end, and of course soliciting your feedback as well, so we can meet your objectives through this function. So I'll turn this over to Dimitri, and we'll give you really a detailed status of where we are with this fund analysis, and feel free to ask questions about whether anything we've worked on in the past, currently, or what's going on in the environment in the school district internal auditing.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, testing.
Yes, Denise, we are thrilled to have you, and we can hear you fine. But we've
I
just
will
had,
wait.
we've just had a slight change in the program where we're going to have Naraki Smith starting with us, and then we will, we'll queue you up in a little bit. Is that okay?
No problem. I will sit, wait. Thank you.
Thank you.
So good evening
And
again.
Dimitri, I'm sorry, just one more thing. Just if you could point the mic just right into your mask.
You hear me now?
That is better. Thank you so
Better?
much.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so good evening. Thank you for having us again. As part of our today's presentation to you is also to give you a little bit more information about our fund balance analysis, where we are looking at the district's internal controls and procedures regarding the development of the fund balance. So that type of analysis includes a review of records that are maintained specifically within the business office. The scope includes, the analysis through the end of the last fiscal year, meaning June 30th, 2021. We conducted our initial planning in September, in the middle of September, and we conducted our interviews with the business office, with the assistant superintendent for business, at the end of September, and we started on our field work on that date as well. We starting collecting the records that are maintained, physical records within the business office, but also the digital records that are maintained within WinCap. We are in the process of analyzing those records, and I have outlined what records we're looking, such as budget status reports, revenue status reports, the budget narratives, the budget detail reports, budget presentations, but also other reports that do affect these other reports, like budget transfer reports, journal entries, and outstanding purchase orders. So you can understand that this analysis is very deep, includes a lot of your review of detailed information, and that helps us to understand the district's assessments of projected revenue and expenditures, and ultimately, the fund balance. The interviews that we conducted helps us understand the process that the district has in place regarding how the business office and the district communicates or gets information from the building level in regard to what their needs are, and they're eventually included in their presentation to the board to make that final decision to adopt the budget. So there's a collaborative approach in conducting a budget, fund balance, and a projection of revenue and expenditures. As Darren mentioned, in January we plan to draft a report. We are actually in the stages of drafting the report, and we'll do our quality control, and we'll share the draft with the business office to make sure that all our facts are correct, and also present it to the audit committee. Just to give you an understanding what the report will look like, the report will include an analysis of the general fund balance, showing you trends, 3-year trends of the fund balance, discuss about the fund balance designations, and also do comparison review, benchmarking of fund balance. So, in our analysis, you will see where North Shore School District is and compare it to other districts that are comparable to the district's budget size. I think that's very valuable analysis, to see, how we are with our peers. Sorry. We're also going to be looking at the restricted reserves. That's an important part, to making sure that the district has a plan to have reserves in its fund balance, that it's also reflected in your financial statements. And then as part of it, because it's a cycle review, if any, we will have observations and recommendations. And the goal for these recommendations is to make sure that procedures are tightened, or develop an environment that could be more efficient. On a preliminary level, I can say, that, and all the time that we spent with Olivia, the controls have been, very adequate in the development of the projections. We're very pleased to see all the detail that is maintained to substantiate, the projected expenditures. But if there's any recommendations, it will be to improve an already efficient environment. And there's also going to be, with the report, exhibits, that will show on a summary and on a detailed level the projected revenues and expenditures and the analysis of the reserves. Any questions so far?
Can I ask a top level
Please.
question? And I want to make sure public members have time. So we do have new members. So I want to say that traditionally, the Internal Audit Committee has met twice a year. One of those meetings, the purpose of which is to review the actual reports and the work and to discuss that, and one of which is to, review the risk assessment and discuss what we're going to do in the coming year. Given that we don't have a report to review now, I feel like we're saying we have to schedule an additional meeting if the report will be done in January or February to do that, so that we can devote the May meeting to the risk analysis and the discussion of what we need to look at next. Is that the case?
Yes. We would like to have the opportunity to discuss our fund balance analysis with the audit committee. Again, the report will be shared to you in draft, because we want to make sure that we address your concerns as well, or answer any questions that you may have. We would like to have that opportunity, to discuss that report in detail, so we can communicate to you the work that we have done and the results that we have, found. And we can certainly meet again in May, so we can discuss the results of our risk assessment. We would like to have these communications, with the audit committee and with the board.
So the draft report is planned for January. When would you say we should schedule a meeting to discuss that report?
So our goal is to have the draft report to the business office by the end of January. Giving our experience with the business office, there's a quick turnaround, to review our findings. So I would like to say that we can have another meeting with the audit committee in the middle of February or end of February, because I know there's a vacation, in the middle of February.
Right, there's a break, and obviously we're in the budget season, and we would traditionally discuss this report now.
Yeah, so I would like, to say, like, in the February, we'll be ready to discuss the report with you.
What do you
At the
think,
beginning
Marion?
of March. I have the same question, Sarah, so I'm glad you raised it. And I think it would be helpful to have the meeting discussing the report well ahead of the budget vote. I don't know that February is a good time because people are traveling. I would think that a meeting in March before a meeting.
We have
in
a
March,
February 17th and a March 3rd.
I would
But it's
say
gotta,
March.
I'm like, I'd move it up. We're gonna be deep. What's the meeting before even February 17th? Does anyone know offhand?
That's February 3rd, which is the initial budget presentation. I'm getting this from our website, so.
Yeah, but the initial budget presentation isn't,
Make sure you have the right ones.
It's
Last
much
time I
on
looked on the
us
website, I had the
as-
wrong one. Had the prior year.
as when we get into the line by
Let
lines.
me see what I have here.
I think we probably went on February 3rd. I mean, it should be done now, so February 3rd seems fine.
Yeah, we can try to make it February 3rd.
I'm just concerned about the 17th being so close to vacation. People will be away.
Yes, me too. So
February
I'm like,
3rd,
I'd push it up.
yeah.
I'd be like, do it on the 3rd.
February 3rd is feasible for you guys?
Yeah.
Olivia, what about your office?
I have to talk to my team.
Okay, so let's not
Yes.
pin it down right now.
Because our budget work timeline is very different from your budget work timeline.
Correct.
Okay. So let's note that we are looking for something February 3rd ideally. And if it can't happen, we could either push or have independent meeting.
Just bear weather in mind, before you push.
Yes.
Uh,
I mean,
60
but
degrees
if it had
today.
to
We're done
be-
with, we're done with.
No kidding, right.
February's the last time, but I don't.
But if we
really-
had to split this meeting out, would you be opposed?
I actually think it's a bad idea because people are used to us meeting at certain dates. Yes, they may not be here, but they may be clicking in. Remember we have the superintendent search in there too.
I know,
It's
yeah.
a lot,
You're
it's a
not wrong.
lot of days.
It's not gonna get better though, which is why now would be good.
Okay, so I think for the purposes of right now, we have some targets and we will hopefully be able to make it work. And if not, then we'll come up with some alternatives and as a board will decide.
I will memorialize.
Okay. We have a meeting January 6th, of course, is our next meeting, at which point we can finalize this.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on our internal audit process?
I had two very, very, very quick questions.
Sure.
The benchmark candidates would be similar budget size, I assume, with a range up and down,
Yes, yes.
and there's a geographic proximity as well, or?
So it is geographically proximity like within Nassau and Suffolk County because we believe, the school districts on Long Island are very comparable.
Okay,
Another metric that we have is also the Commonwealth ratio,
Mhm.
because that plays into effect on the revenue side as well. Without
Okay.
going into any more details, yeah.
okay.
Right.
One thing to possibly consider is percentage going to colleges and or four-year colleges in terms of the directionality of districts for finding peers.
Mm-hmm.
Second question I had was, you mentioned preliminary controls have been very adequate. Adequate can mean a lot of things, like the oil level in my car, if it's adequate, is exactly where I want it to be. But if my kid's performance is in school is adequate, I might want a little more. So which version of adequate are you using there?
So our version of adequate is from the risk management approach. Okay, so we rate our internal controls high, moderate, and low. Okay, high means that there's no policies, no procedures in place, no oversight. Okay, there's no reports to find. Okay, so obviously in that situation, there's going to be a high risk that the numbers will be incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
We obviously want to see the opposite, which is the low risk area. In the low risk area, we're going to see an environment that has policies in place, has the budget, being reviewed also by the board, by the audit committee. Okay, there is a reserve plan in place. There is procedures in place, regarding the budget development. All right, there's a multi-step like a budget calendar and review process. When we see that, we consider that adequate controls to assess as a low risk area.
Okay, so you can't really do better than adequate.
Adequate is the top of your scale,
An audit opinion will be satisfactory.
right?
Okay. No, boring.
We're fine with
Yeah.
Can I ask?
I will say,
Well-
Olivia, the level of detail.
I'm sorry, just say the mic.
Yes, I will say that the level of detail behind Olivia's analysis is pretty extraordinary. So
Okay, pretty extraordinary. All right, thank you.
going outside of our boring auditor talk, yes.
Can I just
Thank-
ask a follow-up to Dave's question?
Sure.
When you're talking about comparisons, what does it have to be of a comparable school district? Because you could do it on a percentage basis rather than a dollar basis, right? So if we're in the same, if we're in the same percentage, I don't think it matters the size of the budget, right? Because you could be Massapequa, and if we're at like a 5%, and that Massapequa was at a 5%, then we're, and that's where the average is, and we're good, right? I'm just using that, I'm making that up, those numbers up. But I'm just saying, shouldn't it be a percentage?
So
Well, yeah, well, so they were describing how to look at districts that we feel would be similar, but yeah, if their budget is much larger or much smaller. But yes,
I,
You're right.
I'm just not sure why you have to look at similar districts.
So
Why wouldn't you? Because it's a dollar thing. It's not like
I
an
don't think they mean
educational
similar
thing.
in terms of budget size. They mean similar in terms of,
Yeah, they were talking about the wealth factor. I don't know that it makes a difference. Why would it make a difference?
I
So-
think, sorry, please.
please go ahead.
Well, I'll let you guys go and then I'll follow up.
go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for the question. And what we have seen as valuable information for the district, because they're hands-on with the budget, but it was the audit committee and the board, is when they see this type of comparison analysis, and you have already been receiving that comparative analysis through Olivia, because I've seen the budget presentations, and she's already has conducted her own. We're doing very similar analysis independently. So, we're not really copying, pasting, the budget presentation to be included in our report. But in our report, what we see as valuable is that, you compare the district's budgets, projected revenue expenditures, and then along with that, you also compare the fund balance, and then you compare the district reserves. So when you have that snapshot, you want to see how the other districts are doing. So you can see, for example, another district, okay, I'm just gonna put round numbers. You have a $50 million, district operation budget, okay? And you see that district has reserves for workers' comp, capital, TRS, CRS. And then you compare it to the other district, $50 million, budget operations, but that district does not have any reserves. So from a financial perspective and financial health perspective, you want to see, okay, that district that has reserves is much better leveraged against any future rain days, if you want to call it, against the district that has not put any reserves in place. And there are percentages in our analysis to see how much the fund balance as a percentage of the expenditures is. So then you can see in comparison what the other districts do. And, our comparison, again, I want to highlight that it's not just only on the dollar side, like the $50 million budget, for example, it's also on the Commonwealth ratio, okay, which is very important to, to see, whether you're comparing, this district with an equal community level rather to another wealthy or not wealthy, school district. So we believe those financial metrics are very important when you look at an organization's revenue, expenditures, and fund balance.
Can I ask that question from a slightly different perspective? And thank you for that answer. I thought that was really interesting. I appreciate it. I think sometimes in our discussions, we've seen, I'm going to say attention, and I really don't know if that's the right word, between what the law says, right? The law is very specific in some areas about 4% fund balance, and there's some vagaries about the situation we're in versus the reports you get from the state controller, right? Which uses entirely different metrics to measure the financial health
Fiscal
of the
stress.
district. And those seem honestly in tension to me, right? Because the controller is concerned that you have enough cash versus your monthly expenses versus how you leverage all of that. Do you guys want to talk about how you're going to look at that or say anything about that? Because
Well-
it's of interest to us.
Excellent question, and thank you for that. So part of the internal audit function, when we look at this fund balance analysis, just as your external auditors look at that, is to make sure that whether we're in compliance, with the 4% tax cap, limit. So we want to see if we're in compliance with that. Now, but this fund balance, this internal audit is not, it's not just compliance perspective, it's also looking at the efficiencies of the controls and seeing how the controls developed by the business office assist the district in its financial health. So we take it, I understand your point where, okay, we have to be in compliance with a 4% cap, but like sometimes that 4% cap, doesn't help us with the fiscal stress monitoring reports that the state is, showing. But we're here for your district, okay? And I know in your minds, you want to see the district, to be financially healthy, so you can still support the programs and your mission, for the students. So our report will assist you in, mapping that and understanding, whether you're in compliance, whether you're in physical financial health.
Okay, I want to make sure that our questions are answered, but we also have to make sure Denise from remote is active. I want to make sure Angela has an opportunity. She has questions. Why don't we do this if you don't mind? Let's turn it over to Denise, have her present, and then we can ask whatever questions we have in the remaining time that we have.
Sure.
Unless I'm not cutting you off, am I, Darren, Dimitri? You good?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're here for you.
All right. That works for trustees? Okay, Denise?
Yes.
All right, terrific.
You can hear me. Oh, I'm so happy.
We're thrilled to have you, at least whatever we have of you, and we're ready for you to begin.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to meet with you remotely. I broke my arm very badly last week and had to have surgery, so I'm still not able to drive. But thank God for modern technology here.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the district's claims auditor. My position in the district is to review all of the accounts payable, any checks that are cut on the for the district for all the expenses. And I usually give a report on a monthly basis to the district. And I come to the district approximately 2 to 3 times a month to review all the expenditures and to make sure that we're in compliance with the general municipal laws and our own purchasing policy within the school district. I did a summary analysis of the 2020-21 school year, and we had produced 5,271 checks altogether, which also means that there was many more invoices. Probably most checks have 5 to 10 invoices per check. And I'm glad to report that the district has a very low exception rate for the check error percentage, which is the total amount of errors for the year, which was 36 errors for the whole entire year, was a 0.22%, which is 1/4%. And then the dollar amount of the errors was 0.3%, which is 1/3%. That's a very low rate in comparison to other school districts that I do the claims auditing for. And I think it's something to be said that the business office works very diligently to make sure that the controls in that process are adequate to to keep us in compliance with all the laws. In the past 5 months for the 21-22 school year, I'm sorry, the percentage rate for the check error percent is a little bit higher, but it's skewed because the 1 month we had a little bit of a higher rate because it was like the transition from one school year to the next. We had 4 errors in 1 month, and it bumped up our exception rate to a 0.56%. And then the dollar amount of error percentage is 0.21%. So we're still doing very well. And I know as the months go on, it's fine. Right now we're in a transition with a new accounts payable staff. And so far, The transition is going well. The training has been very good, and so far everything is looking good, and it doesn't seem like there'll be any change in the way things will be being reported, because the training is going to be just, for a smooth transition from one to the other new employee. So I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Angela, please.
Okay, am I good? Okay, so thank you for that, and it's great to have such a low error rate, exception rate, so that's great news. For my understanding and my knowledge, can you give an example of one of those errors, for example, the most material one? Just as an example for me to understand the type of errors, that's one question. And the second one, whether or not the errors are categorized by the reason for the error.
Yes, my reports are very detailed, and it tells you exactly what the error is. The majority of our exceptions are sometimes, like last year, the overall, the exceptions were, the majority of them were invoices that were over 90 days old when they were processed. And which means that the invoice date, it took 90 days to pay the invoice from the date that it was generated. Sometimes that might be a factor that the vendor may not have sent us the invoices. Last year, we were still in partial shutdown with, some of the companies were in partial shutdown, and we weren't getting the invoices on a timely basis. And then we have to have an approval of those invoices before they get to processing in accounts payable. They have to go back to the originators. So it is a little bit of a process, but it's something to, it's a control that you want to try to process invoices as quickly as you get them, so that, the district is in with good standing. But for the most part, when I do see them, it's mostly because it was an issue with the vendor not getting us the information to process the payment. And confirming is the other one that is the highest in exception of the 36, probably half of them. And that is when the purchase order date is after the invoice date. So the purchase was made before went through the normal accrual process of setting up the purchase order. So sometimes that happens where it might have been an oversight, or we're waiting for a board approval of the contract. It's all different little reasons. But for the most part, there's no exception. These exceptions are more of a control thing, where it's not fraudulent in any way,
Yes.
but it is a reportable item.
All right. Thank you very much. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Other trustee questions or audit member questions?
I'm just going to say October didn't have any exceptions at all,
Yeah.
which
Yes,
was astonishing.
yes,
400,
Yes.
more than 400 transactions and no exception.
yes. And that was the beginning of training our new staff member. So to me, I was very pleased to see that myself.
I have a question and a comment. I'll
Yes.
start with the comment, actually. It's both for you, Denise, and for our Noraki Smith gentleman. I love that you all use this very neutral word of adequate. And I just have to point out that on the human perspective, it sounds pretty phenomenal. So thank you.
It is. I have to say, I like to look at North Shore's controls, and I bring them to some of my other districts because I feel the standards are set high in North Shore, and it's a pleasure working for the district.
It's very interesting to, hear the jargon of each different industry. And in your case, it's clear that the industry is striving to be very, sort of very strictly dictionary. Yes, they're adequate. I think
I think it's audit jargon.
phenomenal. So,
And-
but
and you
exceptional, I would say.
There was a photocopy of a receipt instead of the original receipt, that would be an exception.
yeah, so it's great to
Yes.
have the
Right,
clarity. Thanks for that.
right.
I do have a question. I'm also the person in the room who tends to ask the real basic, not just 101, but minus 101 questions. So I want Noraki Smith, I just wanted to make sure that I understood the word you were using when you were talking about comparing us to other districts. Did you say Commonwealth ratio? WEALTH? The masks are making it hard for me to.
You have to go to the microphone.
I'm telling you to get on the mic and my phone's off. My mic's
Sorry.
off.
A common wealth ratio, COMMON, wealth ratio.
Wealth. And so can you define that for me, please?
Yes, it's a statistic that it's, published, by the state, that has, the common wealth ratio listed in one of those reports, that, has all the school districts in New York. So I don't know how they come up, with those, numbers. But it's something that's been utilized to like rank school districts, in their assessment of, the wealth ratio and, the community.
Okay,
Essentially,
Thank you.
it's a metric, for better or worse, of the general affluence of a particular neighborhood.
Very good. Yes, that's
Okay.
that's a very good description.
thanks, Dave.
Thank you. We somehow seem to have gotten ourselves back on time, unless other folks have questions. All right, I want to thank our auditors. Denise, thank you. I hope you heal quickly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, and happy holidays.
Thank
You
you,
too.
Denise. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Denise.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
So
And
thank you for having us.
Rocky Smith.
Oh, no, thank
Thank
you. It
you.
was just for my knowledge. Right. But it's great that it's so low for the number of invoices. It's just. like,
Thanks, Jack.
All right. See you soon.